Welcome to this important webinar on moving the English Learner Roadmap forward, lessons and bright spots from the field. Your participation is very much appreciated. I am Marta Hernandez, the Executive Director of Californians Together. Over our 3-year experience with EL Rise, our Educator Workforce Investment Grant, in collaboration with SEAL, the Sobrato Early Academic Language, and Loyola Marymount University Center for Equity for English Learners, working across the state in various communities has provided us with valuable insights into the power of the EL Roadmap policy. So this afternoon, you will hear a review of this precious English learner policy and also what this shift has meant for schools and districts throughout the state and the lessons we have learned. You will also hear about bright spots and what it looks like when districts and its leadership take actions to implement the roadmap in an effort to deliver aspirational, comprehensive, equitable, accessible, and effective schooling for English learners. We will hear from 3 districts, yes, 3 bright spots. With us, we have Elodia Ortega-Lampkin, Superintendent of the Woodland Joint Unified School District, Lindsay Lilly, Director of the English Learner Services for Elk Grove Unified School District, and Norma Camacho, Assistant Superintendent of Azusa Unified School District. We will also hear perspectives from our EL Rise partners, Anya Hurwitz, Executive Director of SEAL, and Magali Lavadens, the Levy Presidential Chair in Ethics and Moral Leadership and founding Executive Director of the Center for Equity for English Learners. We are going to engage you in what needs to be done to move the English Learner Roadmap forward as a state, and we will also share resources and tools. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our workshop presenter, a national English learner expert and the design team lead for EL Rise, as well as the author of 3 of our new EL Rise publications, the founding and current board member of Californians Together, and the co-chair of California's English Learner Roadmap Policy Work Group, none other than Dr. Laurie Olsen. Laurie?
Thank you, Martha, and hello, everybody. It's already been 5 years now since our State Board of Ed unanimously adopted the English Learner Roadmap, setting out that new state vision, 4 interrelated and research-based principles, which were meant to really guide education of more than 1.1 million English learners across the state, and called upon all of educators in California to embrace its responsibility for delivering coherent, aligned, asset-based, meaningful, equitable, and impactful instruction programs and services for the success of our multilingual students. It all came about as our state was still emerging from an English-only era, transitioning from that highly prescriptive No Child Left Behind era with really strong accountability that was intended to close equity and achievement gaps for groups including English learners, but with very disappointing impacts. The Common Core standards had been adopted. We had our new ELA-ELD framework, a new accountability system that was built around local control and continuous improvement. We had a state seal of biliteracy that had been passed. And California voters had passed the EDGE initiative calling for expanded dual language opportunities. So we really needed a new state policy to replace that old English-only Proposition 227. We needed to address the persistent gaps still for our state's English learners. We had to align with new state and federal standards and new state policies. And we really wanted to speak to a very different set of goals and values for our state. So the roadmap was developed by a stakeholder group from all over the state that were charged by then State Superintendent Tom Torlakson, and told he wanted us to pull together the guidance from across all of these legal frameworks and guidance and the new visions in the state to produce something that was research-based and would really support action throughout the state. You have a copy of the policy. It's been posted in the chat if you need to see it again. It's also on the CDE website. But it was adopted by the State Board of Ed to cheers and tears of relief after the disastrous prior English-only era. And just briefly to remind you before we get into what is going on right now with the implementation of it, the 4 principles that are meant to guide us. That first one, principle 1, so important. setting the basic value of an asset-based approach in our state, valuing building upon the cultural and linguistic assets students bring, speaking to the diversity within the English learner population, the need to respond to newcomers and long-term English learners and newly arrived students, and calling for strong family school partnerships, expressly mentioning preschools along with our other schools. Principle 2. Whoops, why is this not working? I'm not sure. I just got bounced out of sharing my thing. Manuel, can you forward the slide, please? And re-give me sharing privileges. Principle 2 gets to the very heart of curriculum and instruction. The commitment to meaningful access, reinforcing the guidance of the ELA-ELD framework, echoing basic civil rights protections for equal access, speaking to the important role of home language, promising opportunities to develop proficiency in multiple languages. And principle number 3, committing to developing the system conditions that'll make all of that possible. So the leadership, the accountability, building the structures, setting aside the roles, assessment, professional learning, resources that have to be in place for this vision to take hold. And lastly, principle 4, which commits us to a coherent, aligned set of practices and pathways across grade levels from early childhood, yes, through reclassification, but all the way to graduation with the skills that are really needed for participation in a global, multilingual 21st century world. And principle 4 also makes clear that what we're talking about is not just what happens in a school, but what happens in a region, what happens across the state. After the state board adopted the policy, the department led a roadshow throughout the state, through county offices, to really acquaint people with this new policy. And the legislature stepped up and funded the Educator Workforce Investment Grants for English Learner Roadmap implementation. And so we, Californians Together, plus LMU, Center for Excellence for English Learners, SEAL, and CABE, as recipients of those grants, spent the next 3 years traveling throughout the state, building awareness, building capacity to implement the policy. I'm going to be describing to you some of the lessons we learned from that experience, lessons about how the roadmap is being received, understood, implemented, and what we're now called upon to do to really ensure it becomes reality for all the English learners in our state. But first, we want to get a sense of what you are seeing and what you are experiencing by taking a little poll. So, Manuel, would you please launch the poll? First question is really about to what extent you see this roadmap is actually showing up in the districts you know. Is it like serious, widespread implementation? It's alive there. Or there's some implementation, there's some things happening. Or, you know, people are kind of aware of it, but you don't see a lot happening, or it's not happening at all. So that's question number 1. Question number 2. What do you perceive are the biggest challenges and barriers to its implementation? Is it that leadership just isn't even aware that it exists, or they're unsure what to do with it, or there's so much else on their plates, too many other initiatives, they have no bandwidth or urgency to pay attention to it? Or is it that there's just no capacity or resources to make it happen, or something else? We'd like you to take a minute, please. And from the many of you out there that are on this webinar, we want to hear what you've seen. So I'm going to give you a minute to go ahead. And Manuel, can you launch the responses so we can see what's happening to question number 1? To what degree is it being implemented? I'm not seeing any results. I don't know if anybody else can. I know we have people on here from across the state, so I'm really interested. The link is in the chat. And I'm still not seeing any responses.
So to show responses, I need to close the whole poll.
Oh, go ahead and close it.
Surprise. I'll close it now. Okay,
Close
for
it so we
everything.
can see it. Sure, we want to see what's going on. I saw it blink very briefly, But I'd like to, okay, let's look. So so there's some awareness. It seems like about a third of you say there's awareness, but not much implementation. 14%, it's not happening at all. There's only 6% of you where you're seeing serious widespread implementation. It's 5 years in, so the next question really becomes important. Can you scroll up and see this next set about why we think it's not happening right now? And the biggest response, which is very similar to what we heard, is there's so much else going on that leaders don't have bandwidth or urgency to pay attention to it. And so that's crowding it out. The issue of lack of capacity and resources is definitely there, along with leadership being unsure how to use it. Awareness is not the problem. So that's good. People seem to know that the roadmap exists. We need to jump in then at those levels of giving them a picture of what it means to use it, clearing their plates, upping the urgency, building the alignment to what it is they are paying attention to so that they will, in fact, make it happen. And then also always addressing capacity. So thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful for us to see. I'm going to actually close that and share with you what we've been seeing as we went throughout the state. We're posting for you this full report, Moving the English Learner Roadmap Forward, Lessons Learned, which was based on our experiences over those 3 years with the 20 county offices of education, serving educators from over 547 LEAs all over the state, mostly teachers, 8,000 plus teachers, 3,000 plus administrators, and many others. And this is what we found. Finding number one, we really came up against the reality of how very different the English Learner Roadmap policy is from prior policies, and therefore the really heavy lift it is to implement the policy across the state. In part because it's aspirational. It's not bottom line saying you have to do XYZ bottom line. It calls for this lofty picture of what we need to be doing for our students and calling for continuous improvement toward it. It leads with vision. That's principles-based, and they're general so that they can apply from preschool all the way up through high school. And they're descriptive. They're not prescriptive. So people have to make meaning of these principles. They have to sit with them and say, okay, how does that principle apply to us in our school, at our grade level, in our context? With each LEA then having to make their own meaning and their own set of priorities. The policy is comprehensive. It covers everything, all aspects of schooling. And so it can't just be handed to an EL coordinator to handle in their one area of the district. It affects everything that's going on. And it's coherence oriented. So it requires connecting things across a district, across a school, across a community. It's research-based. And it's state policy in an era of local control, meaning the state can put all of this out there as policy, as principles, but it's up to the local areas to take responsibility for making it happen, to craft those local plans, to implement a locally appropriate enactment of the principles. So it's about structural change. It's about building systems. It's about shifting the mindsets and understandings of people, a far more complex endeavor than simply taking a policy and doing the XYZ that it tells you to do. And for that reason, it becomes very important, and this leads to our lesson number 2, that it's coming. Let me go back. It's coming on a basic lack of understanding and capacity in the state to even grapple with what are the needs, what are the assets of our English learners. We are still grappling with a widespread lack of awareness about the roadmap to begin with, but even more than that, we're still feeling the lingering scars from an English-only era with a lot of lack of understanding about what really our English learners bring with them, what they need from us, and what it's going to take to meet their needs. And that's particularly true with administrators who have not had much background around this understanding. So we've had to backfill that basic understanding even to begin the conversation about making meaning of the principles. Lesson number 3, We know English learner expertise really matters, that expertise that understands the assets and needs of English learners. And we know that when it's in the system, it tends to be siloed or not necessarily at a high level of reach to the leadership in districts. We know that turnover is common in those EL positions, that they primarily end up being focused on federal monitoring because that's the way the funding comes for their positions. And so it's not really adequately leveraged or positioned to be able to really infuse the degree of changes that need to occur under the roadmap. Lesson number 4. We see a lack of alignment and coherence across the system. And again, it's because this is such a comprehensive policy. It requires cross-department, cross-function collaboration. It requires intersectionality from the state to the regions, to the district level, to the site level, to the classroom level. And it's been happening in an era with COVID, with so many initiatives, so much crowding down on our districts, requiring them to develop local plans, implement new things, none of which is aligned to the roadmap or calls for alignment to the roadmap. And so, as we saw in your poll, district leaders are having a very hard time even making room for where and how this roadmap fits in with everything else and calling attention to it. And so all of that has weakened the implementation and the impact of our roadmap. And the last big lesson that we've learned is that it is so powerful when it is actually embraced by local leaders. It has the kind of impact we would hope it to have. And unfortunately, that is so seldom the case, that we have leaders that are aware of it, that are committed to it, that are embracing it. But in those bright spots districts, we see that the top leadership is messaging real urgency about this. They are embracing this as the answer to a major piece of what needs to be happening in our schools. They are committing time and resources to creating shared understanding, seeing to it that all leadership, all people in the district, in the community are understanding this roadmap, significantly investing in professional learning for multiple roles, not just for teachers on classroom strategies, but for counselors, for school board members, for administrators. They're leveraging partnerships with external sources of English learner expertise and creating the new systems and structures that'll really center English learners. And so in the absence of more traditional state kind of compliance things, we are dependent on this kind of leadership administrator focus. And when it happens, it is really beautiful. I want to share with you a little bit of a video and then explain to you what it's about and how it leads to our panels. The English Learner Roadmap calls upon educators to arise to the vision and to take responsibility for implementing it. This call for assets-based, inclusive, comprehensive schooling that centers English learners, centers language and cultures. That only happens if there are systems that are set up to enable that to happen, to facilitate that, to support that. And so the role of the district is really important. A district that steps up and says, we're going to create some coherence across our district. We're going to build pathways from preschool up to high school. We're going to do the work with our administrators and our counselors and our parents and our teachers. And so the district role is huge in giving life to this roadmap. Oops. Oops, come on. There we go. So the second resource we wrote for you, besides the lessons learned, is our Bright Spots compendium, where we describe 5 districts and the paths they took, the different paths they took to embracing and enacting the roadmap, because they show that it really can be done, what it is like when it's being done, how you can really make it yours and locally appropriate, and really arrive at the impacts that you're hoping for. They have different entries, different paths, but all of them invoke all 4 of those English Learner Roadmap policies. So in this Bright Spots compendium, we speak about 5 districts. We speak about Azusa Unified, Elk Grove, Cutler Rossi, Woodland Joint, and Desert Sands. And when you read those, when you hear them, when you hear the stories, it really inspires action. It gives permission to local leaders to recognize you can really make it your own, make it be what needs to be for your district. And so we want you to hear from some of those leaders now. And as you listen to them, I want you to be thinking about all 4 of those principles and what they look like in very different situations in the hands of different leaders and thinkers and educators and communities who are embracing the roadmap. And we're going to start with Elodia Ortega-Lankin, the wonderful superintendent of Woodland Joint Unified School District. Elodia, take it away, my dear.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here, very honored to be here, very humbled to have been recognized our district in this beautiful project journey that we're all going through. So I just want to share with you a little bit about our journey. I'm going to focus on principles 1 and 3 mainly, and then just share with you a little bit about what it's been like for us in Woodland. Next slide, please. A little bit about us. We have over 9,500 students. We're mostly a Latino community, and you see the other percentages that we have. Our next higher population is our white students, and then we have a little sprinkling of other students. Next slide. We have 74 social economic disadvantaged students, 70%. Migrant students, 2.6, and we have English learners. We have 22% of English learners, and just it gives you a little taste of who we are in our community. But we're basically an agricultural town up in Northern California by Sacramento, and we are very heavily with a lot of migrant families, a lot of migrant farm workers. And so for us in Woodland, the English roadmap was, to me, a non-negotiable. Something that I have been waiting for as an bilingual educator, as an administrator, for something to come along. So when I first heard about the English Learner Roadmap being developed, I was very excited for it to come out. And when it did, right away, I was 100% on board to use this tool with all the research put together, with all the thought put together, with guidance on supporting my district and my schools and my principals in leading the work that we need to do for our English learners. In Woodland, it's not an option. It's not an afterthought. It has to be up in front. So when we developed our LCAP goals, we kept the English EL roadmap in mind when we developed our goals. So these are our 4 LCAP goals. And the first one is college and career ready, which aligns very nicely to the roadmap, especially for principle 2, to meet the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. And then we specifically were very deliberate and made sure that there was one goal specifically for English learners. And the wording was very specific. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't just about student English learner achievement, but acceleration of English learner achievement. And that we emphasized an assets-oriented approach in our LCAP goal. And then goal 4 was to engage in student leadership and youth opportunities, so also to promote student leadership. And all these goals support our English learners. I believe that all are supported by the English Learner Roadmap. And like I said, when we developed the goals, these goals 3 years ago, it was with the English Learner Roadmap in mind. We had it right there in front of us as we were working with staff and discussing what our LCAP goals would be. So it was from the beginning, and it leads to work for everything that we do. Next slide, please. So I want to talk to you about Principle 1, because that's been something that we've been really focused on our school district. Making sure that we really work hard on changing the mindset of how we view our English learners. So for me as a superintendent, is setting the stage, right? That English learners are a priority. That is not something that we do as an afterthought or when we have time or if we have funding. We have to make it work. And we have to use what we have, the tools that we have. And of course, the English roadmap, English Learner Roadmap is a tool that's helped us with that. So how can we use that to help guide us and making sure that we're looking at everything that we do with this asset-oriented mindset, to making sure that we're creating welcoming environments. So we use the tools with our staff as the rubrics, to identify how we scored as a district, as school sites, and identified areas that we needed to improve on and focus on. We also have community family engagement specialists, CAFE specialists at our schools to support that, to make sure that there's a point person that staff and students and families can go to support that liaison work. And that has also been a huge piece of supporting our Principal One. We make sure that all our professional development is culturally relevant, including things like Latino Family Literacy Project to inspire, Promesa, parent trainings, and social emotional learning transfer nights. We do a lot for our parents. It's very important for me and for to know that our parents are receiving quality training, empowerment, that they know that they're part of their child, they're partners with us, and that they're working alongside with us in supporting their children. We have we have a board, one board member who was on our ELAC and then went to DLAC and now is on our board. And that was because of the hard work that we've done with building parent capacity. And so she is a great role model for the rest of our families. And it's part of the work that we've done in making sure that the staff development and including trainings for parent is culturally relevant. We've also have in general education, we have behavior specialists in our schools, social workers, counselors, and to create those intervention supports. We recognize that our families and students need supports beyond academics, beyond what maybe we can offer at school, and we want to help them make those connections in the community with the supports that they need to be successful. Next slide, please. So for Principle 3, again, this one, it was very intentional. Again, I wanted to point out again that we made sure that they're in the LCAP, that goal 3 that you saw earlier, accelerate the academic achievement of English learners of each. And that word was very specific, of each. And we had a lot of discussion about that, of each English learner through an assets-oriented approach and standards-based instruction. So that goal is something that is woven into our school plans, like I mentioned earlier. Our principals have a whole section on how they're going to address that goal. We make sure that in order to do that, you just can't talk about it. You just can't, put language on a piece of paper. You have to fund it. You have to fund it, make it a priority, and make sure that but money comes behind it to provide those resources. We have EL specialists at our school sites. We invest in paraeducators. We have been investing in training for paraeducators because I believe that they're the pipeline for future teachers. And we're recruiting parents to want to become paraeducators. And we have some of our parents that went through training who are doing training for other parents. So investing in our people, investing not just in the goals, but putting money behind it and making sure that I go to the board and make recommendations to support by adding the resources that are needed to support our English learners. We've been revising what we used to call our English Learner Master Plan, but now we're calling it English Learner Plan this year to make sure that is revised and it's aligned to the EL roadmap. So it's the work that we are almost done with, just about done. So that work is almost completed. And that has caused a lot of opportunities for more dialogue, about what we can do to enhance the past English Learner Master Plan to now our English Learner Plan, to revise it and making sure that it is aligned to the 4 principles as we move forward, because that plan is going to be around for another 4 or 5 years. I'm a big believer in what gets monitored gets done. So we have a very strong monitoring system, and creating systems of data decisions and implementing visiting classrooms. We do walkthroughs, PLCs with our staff, lots of checking in, celebrations as well, lots of celebrations. And so that's really important to us, is that what gets monitored gets done, and it's got to be scheduled if it's going to happen. And so I'm always checking for schedules, checking if it got done, making sure that I'm present as the superintendent, also popping in. I pop into things all the time, ask questions all the time, because if people see me as the leader asking questions, asking, is this get scheduled? Is this going to get done? What's the plan? Let's review it. As the superintendent, it just heightens the importance of it, right? And it's going to heighten it with my cabinet. It's going to heighten it with the principals. And then the parents, when I go to DLAC, they feel confidence and they feel supported. So my role is really important in that piece, that I have a strong voice and show leadership and support of staff in the monitoring, but also celebrating successes. We are, piloting. We continue to pilot materials, ELD assessments to make sure that we're improving in that area. We are working really hard on creating a culture of data-driven collaboration and training. So we have PLCs, we do coaching, and we make sure that our designated ELD and integrated ELD, that there's monthly collaboration with our teachers. Again, in those collaborations, I pop in. I don't just leave it to my services team. I'm very hands-on, popping in and checking in with teachers, and they notice. And they also notice when I visit classrooms and I look for things that they were doing in staff development. And it really does go a long way. So I think the reason I wanted to talk about Principle 1 and 3 is because those are the areas that we've been focused on. But I think what I really want to highlight and emphasize for those of you who are here, I'm not sure if there's superintendents on this webinar or not, or cabinet members. If it doesn't come from the top leadership, it's not going to just happen by magic at the sites. It has to, we really need leadership from the district office and the support with funding, and the support with making sure that it's called out in the LCAP, and that, the support in the school plans and follow through and attention to this at all times in everything. And so, like I say, in Woodland, English learners are a priority, and we continue to work really hard at that. We work on continuous work on making sure that our families feel welcomed, included. We started a mariachi program. That has been a big deal. When they started, let me tell you, they weren't very good. I would go to the concerts and they'd be squeaking with her, and I would be like, but now they're going to perform on Friday at the Cave Regional Conference, and they're doing much better. But what a pride that brings to our community. And also I'm very proud that some of our teachers are going to be presenting at the conference. So that's kind of showing them support and the importance of supporting English learners, not just in our district, but around the state. And we have about 40 parents attending, and some paraeducators attending too. So building capacity, supporting, and making sure things are happening and implemented. So I just wanted to emphasize those pieces. Next slide, please. So some of the, I kind of spoke to this, but some of the things that are areas of strength and are very critical is the commitment also from the board. I talked about the superintendency role, cabinet role, but the commitment from the board, and it's very important to educate the board. So let them know that there is an English learner roadmap, what it is, why was it developed, why is it so important, what does it contain, how is it going to help with student achievement, and why should we be using this and consider and implementing it into our LCAP, into our school plans. So the leadership does matter, from all the way to the top, all the way down to the classroom, because teachers are leaders too, right? So building the leadership and capacity and everyone involved does matter and does make a difference, and to have a united commitment. We are also working on our board has a equity policy, and we also have we're doing a systemic equity review. I didn't want to call it an equity audit, right? And that's what they usually call an equity audit. So I was very deliberate and said, we're not going to do an equity audit. We're going to do a systemic equity review. We're going to see systemically what can we do to make sure that there's equity across the district regarding all students, and also, specifically our English learners. So we're doing that. And again, making sure that the LCAP and school plans, there's alignment, and that is reviewed, and that we're looking at the metrics, how we're measuring it, and that we continue to have collaboration across, teams, and that everyone takes ownership on our English learners. Everyone, bus drivers, custodians, noon duties, and that, anytime I have a chance to speak to classified staff, I always remind them of how important it is. Even though you're processing the purchase order, you're processing the purchase order to make sure somebody gets something they need in the classroom, right? Or if you're serving lunch, everybody has an impact on student learning and on English learners. So there's ownership on everyone across the district. And of course, parent engagement is critical for us. Our work with EL Rise Partnership has been a godsend to us. Thank you for allowing us to participate. It's just making us stronger and making us reflect by using this tool. We're going to continue monitoring and make sure that we have strong English learner programs.
Right.
And then just next steps, we're going to continue to use data, continue to strengthen our PLC work, continue to, even though the grant has ended with EL Rise, it doesn't mean that we have to end the work. It continues on. It was just a jump start. And then we continue to do alignment across the district. And I mentioned the equity review. And so with that,
Great.
I just want to just share just the last word is English learners are important. All students are important. And so we need to spend special attention to all our groups of students. But it can't be after, like when it can't be an afterthought. And we have a tool. We have this beautiful tool. So an opportunity here that we've been waiting for years. And so the time is now, and start slow. You know, take one principle at a time, start slow, and just one step at a time. And you know, I really believe that one step at a time will make a difference. Let's keep at it, be committed, and celebrate all the ways. And then when we make errors, just get back up and get back at it again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elodia. And definitely people should follow Woodland. We have the case study written up in bright spots if you want to share it with people in your district. We have a film for you of Woodland, which I'll share with you at the end of today. And I also wanted to let everybody know that we're tracking your questions, and there will be a panel with Elodia, Lindsay, and Norma afterwards where we can pose some of your questions. So do put them in the question and answer place on Zoom. And I'd like to introduce Lindsay Lilly, Director of EL Services in Elk Grove Unified School District.
Thank you, Laurie. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here to share a little bit about the work that we've been doing with the 4 principals and our journey in implementing the California English Learner Roadmap. You can probably hear I'm battling a cold, so I apologize. Just to provide context to our work, Elk Grove is the 5th largest district in California and the largest district in Northern California. We serve around 64,000 students with a little over 10,000 English learners, so about 16% of our population. We currently have 68 schools pre-K-12, and we support over 120 different languages. So we're a very large, very diverse district. When we started our work with the California English Learner Roadmap, we were really excited to dive into the resources and start looking at areas where we could leverage the work that we had already started. We really wanted to create systems change and build coherence because we are such a large district. We also realized that we really needed to know our multilingual learners and be more responsive to their different strengths and needs, which meant growing our own knowledge and understanding of the different typologies of English learners and how we can best support them. And so our intention was to work collaboratively with several departments, largely with our Family and Community Engagement Department, to build programs that value and support strong family, community, and school partnerships. And I'm seeing that my bullets aren't popping up, but if you could go to the next slide. Oh, there they are. And so for Principle 1, we were able to create 4 welcome centers. And these centers serve as a hub to support our families navigate the enrollment process, but also connect them to our school and community resources. Many of our sites began offering tutoring specific to our newcomers because we realized that our newcomers have very unique and specific needs, and we wanted to find creative ways to start providing additional support. We started an LTEL language lab, which was a summer opportunity that we provided to one of our highest density regions. And we had teachers and EL instructional coaches partner to provide summer school to our students who were entering middle school, either as a long-term English learner or they were at risk for becoming an LTEL student. And this was a really unique approach because we utilized our EL instructional coaches and had them co-teach with our teachers in the morning. And then we used time in the afternoon to come together in PLCs for professional development. So it was student-centered, but teacher-focused, and really being able to build capacity by providing job-embedded PD. In our district, we offer a lot of professional learning. Our EL instructional coaches have been instrumental in training all staff members district-wide on the language acquisition process, how to be assets-based and needs-responsive through our instruction, how a one-size-fits-all approach to supporting our multilingual learners cannot happen. So we really wanted to focus on those different typologies. Through that work, we created various instructional pathways for our newcomers and our long-term English learners, and we even updated our student information system to include the students' typology, their level of English proficiency, and an overall history of their progress that every teacher has access to for their students. And then last but not least, my department offers the translation and interpretation services to support our families and being able to connect with our schools. So finding ways to expand that support. We just were able to add a Farsi and Dari translator interpreter because our largest population of newcomers is coming from Afghanistan. Next slide, please. As we started to explore Principle 2, we really emphasized placing a focus on high quality instruction and how we were going to provide meaningful access to our English learners so that they could access our standards-based curriculum, so they could develop their fluency in English as well as other languages. And coming out of the pandemic, we knew that this meant we had to really refocus our efforts and strengthen our designated ELD programs, but also just importantly ensuring our students had strong integrated ELD instruction as well, and that we have these shared routines and instructional strategies across our 9 regions. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that we were able to work in collaboration with our curriculum and professional learning department was to create an instructional framework based on 4 key principles. And the principles that we landed on as a district were learning targets and success criteria, active participation, structured student talk, informative assessment, and feedback, with ELD and language support embedded throughout. And we're currently training all principals and teachers. This has actually become a district-wide mandated training. And it's the first time in Elk Grove that we've ever created a common language and a definition of high quality instruction. And so our work has really been focused on training and also calibrating how we observe implementation of our district's instructional framework. And so we're able to work with our research and evaluation department to create what we call the font. It's a framework observation note-taking tool. Font observations are not evaluative, and we use this data not only as a component to evaluate implementation of our EL programs, but to also provide actionable feedback to our teachers. Because through feedback that's timely and supportive and tied specifically to instruction is one way that we're going to continue to grow as educators to improve our practice and ultimately improve our outcomes for all students, but especially our English learners. Another thing we're able to do was collaborate with our CTE department, because we noticed that our secondary English learners were often underrepresented in our CTE pathways, and often students had to give up courses or electives because they needed that designated ELD course. So we had one of our CTE teachers partner and co-teach with one of our ELD teachers to pilot a class specifically for our LTELs. And our students got to experience project-based learning through robotics, but there was also a strong focus on language development. And it took a lot of planning between our teachers. It took them being both vulnerable to work together to really truly create this unique experience for our LTEL students. It was a huge success, and we're looking for ways to continue that collaboration, as well as exploring opportunities to collaborate with VAPA. Next slide, please. As we looked at Principle 3, we realized that each level of the school system had to provide resources and support to ensure that we had strong programs that were focused on building teacher capacity. And in order to be able to leverage the strengths and meet the needs of our English learners, we needed better progress monitoring. We needed common assessments. We needed to update our strategic plan from 2013, and we needed support from our EL instructional coaches and ongoing professional development. Next slide, please. And so through a grant, we've been able to mandate professional development, not only on our instructional instructional framework, but also on the California English Learner Roadmap and language acquisition for all classified and certificated staff, all administrators, and cabinet. We're currently drafting our new strategic plan and aligning it to the principles in the roadmap. And then through the EL Rise grant, we were able to collaborate with 2 of our highest density regions and working with both site and district leaders, EL coaches, cross-departmental teams, EL coordinators, all who have been going above and beyond to learn more about the roadmap and start identifying ways that they can incorporate the principles into their own sites and make it their own. Next slide, please. So for principle 4, understanding the need for our English learners to experience a coherent and articulated and aligned set of practices and pathways across all grade levels. And that starts with building a strong foundation in our preschools all the way through reclassification, graduation, post-secondary opportunities, and career readiness. So our intentions were really to increase that cross-departmental collaboration. And this really allows us to avoid working in silos. It helps us see where our work aligns, and understanding that through collaboration, we are more likely to be able to impact change on a wider scale. Next slide, please. So along with our summer school learning labs, we've started to explore and research dual language programs. But for Principle 4, I really wanted to highlight something that we created with our research and evaluation department, and that is our EL PIC. And PIC stands for Program Implementation Continuum, and it's a way for us to evaluate our EL programs at the district and site level and really see where we have alignment and where there's opportunities to grow. And so in our PIC, we look at several factors, and each factor is weighted differently based on importance. So we give an ELD survey to both teachers and students each year. We look at our master schedules for designated ELD. We look at the rate of attendance of our teachers who are attending ELPD. We use our monthly coach reports, our LPAC rates, our font walkthrough observations, and then all of those are combined to give a site a score. So for our site administrators, it can really help with LCAP allocations, as well as identifying what's working or where they might want to do some goal setting for their EL programs. And then at the district level, it helps us to see trend data and how we can better support our sites and EL coordinators. And then last but not least, we've been focusing on this year creating a pathway starting in middle school for the state seal of biliteracy. Oftentimes our students find out that they qualify their senior year, and we really want it to become something that students are working towards as early as elementary school versus something they just happen to fall into when they graduate. So the roadmap has really been a call to action for us. It's a way for us to strengthen our EL services and programs. In the past, as Laurie had mentioned, it had been a focus on FPM and a focus on compliance, but now we have this really powerful state policy that sheds light on what is possible and what we can do to support our English learners. And it has been challenging, but we've been making progress, and it is having an impact. And it has really allowed us to build that collective ownership to ensure that the progress we have made will continue. And our focus on that cross-departmental and site collaboration allows for that more comprehensive approach, because we all hold the responsibility to serve and support our multilingual learners. It can't just fall on one person or one department.
Thank you, Lindsay. I want to say before we go on to Azusa that one of our goals today is for you just to know these things are going on, to have the Bright Spots publication so you can share it with other people in your districts and say, look at what is happening in these other places. And so you can learn about the tools that they're developing, and they can be shared across the state. And so our last one that we're going to highlight today is Azusa Unified School District, enacting the English Learner Roadmap. And Norma Camacho, take it away.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you to share a little bit about Azusa's story with you all. I am Norma Camacho. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. So in Azusa, we are about 90% Latino, 25% approximately English learner, and 80% socioeconomically disadvantaged. We were inspired by the California English Learner Roadmap in that it provides a vision of the educational promise for English learners, but the path each district travels to achieve that vision is going to be different and needs to be guided by the needs and the assets of the district, the students, and the community. Our journey with the roadmap began with examining the principles alongside the story our English learner data told us. When looking deeply at our EL population, we began to disaggregate that monolith of English learner students and found that at that time, approximately 60% of our English learner population were LTALs and their achievement was stalled. So working through a needs assessment, we identified areas correlated to the roadmap from which to focus our efforts. That brought us to looking deeply at Principle 2 and examining what efforts were needed at the elementary level to minimize the number of long-term English learners. And we identified the SEAL model to implement across 3 of our elementary school sites, which had the largest populations of English learners in our district, as well as across all of our preschools and TK classrooms. That led us to look at our professional learning plan and looking at the alignment with what was identified in terms of effective practice in Principle 2 and what needed to occur in order to move the needle and increase the achievement for English learners and reduce that number of LTALs. So again, looking at that ELD professional learning, what was happening during our PLC time was that time dedicated to looking at the needs of our long-term English learners at the secondary level and looking deeply at what was happening during integrated ELD as well as designated. And looking at Principle 1, we emphasized some intentional homeschool partnerships that celebrated the assets of our students, our families, as well as our community. You know, we have a strong Latino community, a lot of culture, and the asset of Spanish language. So we implemented a 90-10 Spanish DLI program beginning at 2 of our elementary schools, actually beginning in preschool, and currently feeds into our middle school and will be leading into a high school pathway so that our students eventually earn the state seal of biliteracy. And again, really celebrating the language, the rich language and the rich culture that exists in our community and really looking at the assets that our students and families bring to our schools. And then aligning our work to Principle 3, we looked at the system conditions that are required to support practice by building teacher leaders that support capacity building and coaching and effective professional learning for ELs across our district. We have ELA, ELD teachers on special assignment. We have a dedicated Title III teacher on special assignment, and 3 of our teachers are bilingual change agents and part of Teach Plus as fellows. And then finally, Principle 4, ensuring that approaches and programs are aligned and articulated across grade levels by refining REL master plans and carving out specific plans for newcomers and long-term English learners, really looking at the needs of those populations of students to ensure coherence across the schools and within our district. Again, being specific and intentional about the needs of our English learners and the goals and actions and services and how they are tied to all of the different groups, if you will, of English learners in our district. And then how those goals and actions in our LCAP align to our school site plans that are focused on the assets and needs of English learners at individual school sites. So what does it take to ensure the promise of the English Learner Roadmap? It takes vision. It takes the support of leadership and the why. The why is our students. To truly lead this work and provide equitable opportunities for our emergent bilinguals. We looked at how to engage all educational partners and collaborating in looking at what it takes to lead that work into action by aligning plans and goals and ensuring that resources and funds are allocated to ensure that that work is occurring. And finally, it ultimately leads to the impact of the work, which for us has resulted in elevating emergent bilinguals in Azusa Unified, as well as reducing the number of long-term English learners and celebrating those rich cultural and language resources that exist in our district and community.
One of the wonderful things about all three of these districts, but I want to focus in on Azusa right now, is that it's not just these leaders that are standing here telling us about how great the roadmap is. It infuses the people throughout the district. So we wanted for you to see a little bit of the film we made from Azusa. It's one of the resources available to you, just to get a flavor of the different voices across the district in Azusa.
When we began to look at the English Learner Roadmap, we tended to look first at Principle 2. We started to look at what was happening in classrooms and how did that align with what was described in the policy. And we began to look at what kinds of professional learnings are needed to ensure that teachers are being equipped, or how is their capacity being built to ensure that we are implementing effective instruction for English learners as was described in the EL roadmap.
The SEAL professional development is done in stages, Module 1, Module 2, Module 3. So we get to hear a little bit, learn a little bit, and then we get to take that back to our classrooms and try it. Then we get to meet together as a team and we get to collaborate and say, this worked for me, this didn't work for me. What did you do to make you so successful? We have coaches that we can reach out to in our district that are willing to come in and model. If we say, that really was a tough strategy, I really struggled with it. What can I do? Let me show you. And then seeing the coaches model it, sometimes, oh, okay, it's an aha moment.
The kids are engaged in different activities. It's all built around content, but they're using language and they're building their learning in center-based spaces where they are owning their own learning experience and supporting each other in the learning experience.
We have seen our students come alive again through the learning that is happening through the professional learning that SEAL provides. In addition to that, the effective practices aligned with that professional learning, with that job-embedded coaching, providing the teachers the tools and the materials and the resources that they need to implement the professional learning along with the side-by-side coaching. And it's just been a shift for us to see the teachers really collaborating around their unit development and lifting up academic language and coming into classrooms and hearing children use rich academic language beginning in preschool. So that has been another byproduct of investing in and really lifting up and looking deeply at the English Learner Roadmap and how to best serve the needs of our English learners.
We also very deeply understand that teachers don't work in isolation. They work with and hopefully greatly supported by their principals. Principals don't work in isolation. They work in connection with their district leaders and the rest of their school community and their school boards. So really thinking about how are we supporting and building coherence across all the levels of the system.
That professional development that we get from our district, providing us time to leave our classroom, but knowing even though we're leaving our students, we're coming back with so much more. So every time I've had to leave my classroom, I'll say things like, wait till I come back tomorrow, I'm gonna have something new for you. And it's just the kids get excited about it.
We need to prepare teachers to be able to also include families and engage them in what our students will be learning and preparing them for that, you know, this global society. And to be completely transparent, is it work? Yes, it is, but it's such valuable work.
It's a comprehensive approach to student learning, to language acquisition, to literacy. I mean, it's just so much that it does for our students and giving them that welcoming environment. I have students that come not only from Mexico, but they come from South America and also from Asia. So I have a lot of multiculturalism here in the classroom, and students are able to express themselves and really be proud of their journey and their family's journey and their voyage to America.
My mom was like born in China, right here, Qingdao, and then she came over here to America, to Georgia, cause like for high school and stuff.
How long did it take your mom to come? Like, how long did she travel for?
Like a day, cause like airplane.
A SEAL classroom is rich with language, it's rich with learning, it's steeped in content. The kids are engaged. They are asking questions, they are absolutely speaking, using language.
The EL roadmap is important because all EL learners have different needs. It makes us excited about teaching, which makes our students excited about learning, which makes our families excited about being engaged.
It's so important for students to have access to that roadmap and to have access to that language because they're going to need it. They need to know that they have a good understanding of what they're learning about, and it just makes them feel so proud to be using that language.
They're proud to be bilingual, and they see it as a gift.
The story of what a district looks like, that takes on that responsibility, that takes on that call to action, is one of the really remarkable things that we've seen in California over the last few years.
Oops. The excitement in these districts is just, it's what we need for our English learners. It's what we want for our English learners. And the roadmap is the path for getting there. You've seen 3 different examples. A number of your questions in the Q&A were about specific tools, the EL pick, wanting to know about ELD assessment pilot in Woodland, wanting to know about the kind of English learner professional development work, about the font. And so we're really encouraging you through the Bright Spots compendium to contact these districts, bring people to see them, have them come talk to you, because when you see it, you know that this is what has to happen. We have time for a little bit of just hearing from I guess Alodia had to leave, but would just really love to hear, what is it you want to have be heard loud and clear across the state from your experience about why this roadmap is so important and what it's really going to take to give it life? Either one of you.
I'll start. I think engaging all of our educational partners, from the leadership, site leadership, district leadership, school site teams, really engaging them and understanding what the work of the roadmap is and what the intentions are and how when we focus our efforts on developing and supporting our English learner populations, the rest of our students are going to thrive alongside them. But really being intentional and focused with this work is really tied to bringing it to life and really, you know, getting that support from everybody in the district has been kind of key for us.
But can I just before, Norma, how do you do that? People were talking about all of these other initiatives. How do you get the support of everybody else or even the attention?
Again, it's the why. The why is our students. And when looking at our data and seeing how compelling that data was, that became the impetus for us. That became our why. And again, you know, sometimes initiatives become cluttered and people are not sure what direction to move in. And we really kind of shifted and said, this is where we need to put our attention. And again, the data and the need of students needs to drive that work.
Lindsay, did you want to chime in?
I was just going to add that for us, it's really been creating a sense of urgency that we have this moral imperative to support our English learners. And it can't just be the EL coordinator at the site, or it can't just be our department. It has to be this collective effort. So making sure that we have the support of our leadership, making sure that we have alignment across our system, that's really helped us to bring the roadmap to life.
Elodia, you interact with superintendents around the state and other people. What do you think it's going to take to get people's attention, and how can we voice it and articulate it in a way that they'll hear the gift of the roadmap?
Boy, you know, it's been so rough these last couple of years and so much distraction from the COVID, and then lately with all the political climate in our communities. That's been so distracting to superintendents. So I think one piece would be to make sure that the cabinet, the services people, right, are informed, and so that they're keeping their superintendents updated, and making sure that those folks have the tools and the knowledge so that they can advise their superintendents, because not all superintendents are curriculum people, right? Not all superintendents were a bilingual teacher or went through the EL journey like I did. Some of them are CBOs, or they come, you know, from different expertise. So I think one way would be to make sure that ed services folks are very versed, and so that they are able to update and keep their superintendent and board informed. And then, you know, with that, I think that would be a start. And of course, you know, any opportunities to update superintendents, like at superintendent AXA events, or other events. You know, it gets superintendent's attention is anytime you're going to recognize one of their staff or anything like that. That gets people's attention. So that's an opportunity. So those opportunities, when you have superintendents in the room, an opportunity to slip in the topic and to discuss it. But the role of the ed services departments it's huge. And so I'm making sure that it's not just on the EL coordinator, but at the cabinet level that are getting the information.
Mm-hmm. So I know that everybody would love to come see what you're doing, get your tools, etc. Are you open to that? I mean, can people come and see and hear and share? And what are mechanisms for that?
Absolutely. We get visitors quite often, so we are happy to host people. If somebody wants to, you know, even just have, you know, a virtual engagement, we are happy to support in any way possible. And I'm happy to share my contact information to arrange that.
Great. We will post those in the chat near the end of this. We need to move on, but you're spectacular leaders. Your districts are just shining lights that can show the rest of the state what it means to give life to this roadmap. I want to give us a chance to hear from our partners that were out there for the past 3 years with us doing the work of EL Rise, to hear some of their perspectives on what they saw and what they think it's going to take. And I think we're going to start with Magali.
Okay, thank you so much. What an amazing webinar and experience to hear, and what a wonderful resources and leaders that we have. We're fortunate that we have leaders as models in the state. And we at the Center for Equity for English LMU, so proud and happy to partner with Californians Together and the broader early academic language in EL Rise. And what we really focus in our collaboration was really looking at system-wide impact. You heard our leaders, our presenters speak to some of these aspects, and what the opportunity that we had through the collaboration on the design team and in dialogue and planning was really about developing and sharing tools and resources for the community. Earlier, Laurie said the importance of looking at all levels. The EL roadmap is really about all levels. So I'm really going to start on the right and then go to the left, because it's intended to be a TK-12 policy around aspirational research-based implementation, not about the floor and the minimal compliance, but really the highest vision and expectation that we have for our English learners. And one of the aspects of our collaboration was really looking at how we prepare educators to be ready to enter into the K-12 arena, the TK-12 arena, where the roadmap is at all different levels of implementation, as you saw from the poll, as we've seen from some of the results that we've shared in this webinar. So we really wanted to focus on the development of school counselors, teachers, and administrators to be ready to enter the space of not just with awareness, but the opportunity to see it in the live, to see the implementation of the English Learner Roadmap in the live. So we created the English Learner Roadmap Toolkit for IHEs, Institutes of Higher Education. We did an analysis of the preparation performance expectations for teachers, educators, and administrators. We compared it to the English Learner Roadmap, and we felt and we found that it was exceedingly short in that area. Like, it was not in alignment. There were strengths, but there were a lot of gaps. And we created these tools and processes for faculties, for supervisors in those programs to be able to use. And the EL Rise collaboration allowed us to share it with those partners across the state. That's still an available free resource for us. And then on the left of your screen, you see two additional tools and resources, which are the English Learner Master Plan Playbook and the LCAP Toolkit. We actually developed the LCAP Toolkit in 2020. In the previous iteration of the LCAP, we have a new opportunity. You heard Elodia and others speak to about the coherence and alignment that is necessary to implement the English Learner Roadmap, to have goals that are focused and differentiated for the variety, the diversity within the English learner group, and to be able to have leadership personally and collectively committed to implementing in the programs and services that we have. So the LCAP Toolkit is one of the resources that we developed earlier prior to EL Rise, and then we disseminated through EL Rise. And on the left, through a lot of the work that we had, we developed a playbook, how to develop an aspirational playbook that is visionary, aligned to the English Learner Roadmap, that goes beyond compliance. And just the minimal compliance is really the floor. We keep saying this in our institutes, but really the roadmap is the ceiling. That's the height of expectations that we really want to have. So in this, we really wanted to address through these tools and resources all of the varieties and levels of the ecosystem. And on the next slide, you'll see a little bit about where we shared this information through our EL Rise collaboration. So it was pretty astounding, because this is all happening during the pandemic. You know, it was not a small feat to come something. It shouldn't go without saying that when EL Rise was originally conceptualized by the design team, we all thought we were going to be in the field. And in the pandemic moments, we had to convert everything to an online delivery system. And that was both a benefit, and also it was a shortcoming, because administrators, leaders, teachers, they were all dealing with the effects, the devastating effects on many of our EL and immigrant communities of the pandemic. And yet they still had this amazing kind of participation and attendance. 35% of the LEAs in the state came to our English Learner Master Plan Institutes. 78% out of 58 counties, 78%, 45 county offices of education participated in our English Learner Master Plan Institute. So just by virtue of their participating in these English Learner Master Plan Institutes were 2-day institutes, and we did many sessions across the state, and it was just amazing to hear that participation. And finally, on the next slide, you will see the follow-up in terms of the other elements that we really wanted to focus on. We talked about that the LCAP is a now and in the moment, so we want to encourage you to use the LCAP toolkit because it's a free, utilizable toolkit, and the next iteration of the EWIC grant is focusing on that. But in our longer-standing collaboration with Desert Sands Unified School District, which is outside of Palm Springs, prior to EL Rise, we had engaged in this process of developing a focus on a roadmap aligned master plan, which they titled Multilingual Master Plan. And it had all of the leadership components that we heard our presenters speak to. It was not just the ownership or the onus on the EL coordinator. It was the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and some of those videos, you'll hear their voices. And at the end of that process, you heard Dr. Angela Randolph and her team. They participated in this poll, in this doodle, not a doodle poll, a Wordle poll that expressed how they felt at the end of their journey of developing a multilingual master plan that is now freely available on their website. That process, that collective commitment, the individual commitments about how they express what it meant to them to participate in the co-design and co-development of a local policy that is aspirational, completely aligned with the 4 principles of the master plan. And many of those resources are available in the bright spots that Laurie mentioned before. So we just want to express our gratitude and say there's more work to be done. None of us can do it on our own, but it's really those wonderful spaces such as these that we have an opportunity to learn and share together. I turn it back to you, Laurie.
Thank you, Magali. And let's see Anya, hear from Anya Hurwitz, Executive Director of SEAL, a key partner in EL Rise. So can
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will just briefly say it's been such an honor to be a part of EL Rise and to do this work in collaboration with these incredible organizations, along with the incredible schools and districts that were part of the project. The power of this policy of the English Learner Roadmap is that it works. It's a powerful, amazing policy, research-based policy. You heard many examples of that this afternoon and evening, but it is a paradigm shift. This is a huge paradigm shift, the hearts, the minds, and the mindsets. So it's imperative that we do the hard work to implement it because the cost of not doing it is far too high. Our schools, we know our schools are not adequately designed to center the incredible assets of our children. So this vision, the vision of this policy, though it is so deeply research-based, and true and powerful, it flies in the face of what we know is happening in classrooms across our state each and every day. Therefore, the work to actually implement it is complicated, it's complex, it takes time, it needs to be done thoughtfully and planfully. We are dismantling much of our current system and practices and therefore redesigning and rebuilding. There is incredible harm that's done on a daily basis if we do not do this complicated work. Again, the cost is too high. When 3, 4, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, when they walk into school and they're told explicitly and implicitly that their language and their culture must be left at the door, we know that damage is done immediately and then builds upon. And that is the system that many of us work inside of and are working to dismantle. So this is complicated work and we have to prioritize the implementation. The current policy context and the social and political context in many ways is very ripe. It's certainly much more ripe than it was back in, before Prop 58 was passed and before the passage of the EL roadmap. And so we have to leverage the context, even within the complicated difficulties of course, the pandemic and the post-pandemic and now the fiscal realities that everybody is seeing in front of us, looming ahead, we still have to prioritize the incredible moment and the power of this policy. It will take systemic capacity building. Otherwise, this policy will remain lip service in many places across our state. So our investments have to have a clear connection to the students, their lived experiences, and then the people across the system that directly influence them. And that includes district leaders. You've heard from incredible district leaders here. We know that role, that leadership, and that coherence building, that local policy implementation is critical. And then a direct through line to the students, right? So to the principals, to the coaches, to the teachers, et cetera. And so there must be that through line. We need a comprehensive transformational vision of what teaching and learning is. That's what the EL roadmap shows us. We can't be satisfied with supplemental materials and pull-out programs, but really a comprehensive vision. These are our students in California. Across the board throughout the EL Rise project, we heard teachers, principals, leaders tell us they want more. Even the folks that participated in the deepest and longest ways, they wanted more, and especially because so much of that happened during the pandemic. So we know that teacher efficacy is so critical. The research is very clear. Teachers need to feel that they have the capacity, they have the skills, they understand the approaches that will impact the students that they are working with. So for teachers to do this complex work, the work of school transformation, the work of equity, and equity-focused education, that there's a huge gap to be filled, and we need to bring forth so that every child in California has access to joyful, language-rich, engaging learning experiences that are personalized and that our systems are professionalized in order to support that. So the English Learner Roadmap absolutely outlines this transformative learning, and we need to continue to commit ourselves to its implementation. And like I said, it's been a huge honor to participate in this project.
Thank you, Anya. Great way to wrap this up. As you've been hearing, it's a different kind of policy, aspirational, research-based, comprehensive, assets-oriented, and powerful when implemented. And after decades and decades of not serving our English learners well enough, we have in our hands the tool to make it work. But right now, given the findings that we shared with you today, it's clear that it's going to be a privilege for those in the few districts where leadership has grasped onto it, and it's going to remain outside of the reach of most English learners in the state, unless we do our work now, all of us, to really focus people on the importance and the urgency. This is a call to action to all of you. Californians Together is launching a statewide campaign to really re-up the implementation of the roadmap through some legislative work we're going to be doing. But for all of us out there, we have to be communicating. This is the framework and policy to ensure English learner access and equal opportunity in California. We need to be implementing it in all of our districts and weaving it into the LCAPs and our monitoring and our master plans and our local capacity building, and connecting it to all of those other initiatives that are taking people's attention but are not addressing so centrally the needs of English learners. So we call upon all of you to be part of this campaign, to support this campaign. We have, as you've gotten a sense of today, put together new resources for you. There's a full vision film, 13 minutes. We didn't have time to show it to you now, but there's a short 3-minute film we're going to be ending with. There's the Bright Spots district films that can really show you what it looks like in these amazing districts you've heard about today. The Bright Spots Compendium, the Lessons Learned report, the Role of County Offices report. All of that is available to you through the Californians Together website. We hope you'll use it. We hope you'll join it. And I'm going to turn this over right now to Martha Hernandez, our executive director, to close us out and to just, we have time to see the little trailer just before as our final little inspiration.
Prop 227 was this almost 20-year void where we had on our state policy a deficit-minded, English-only construct.
When California's State Board of Ed unanimously adopted the California English Learner Roadmap in 2017, it was a moment of great historic significance.
The structure of the roadmap is simply remarkable. The 4 research-based principles work to realize the vision of the EL roadmap. And the principles help to guide all levels of the system towards a coherent, aligned set of practices, structures, relationships, and also teaching and learning approaches that will create an effective, powerful 21st century education for our English learners.
Just the fact that we are to see our students as assets and bring about that change of how we perceive who these students are and what they bring when they come into our system is the big leverage point in terms of what the policy brings.
If we want and need to have intellectual quality of instruction for our English learners, then we need to figure out a way to help our teachers ourselves marry the content standards with the English language development standards.
Someone who can go into the classrooms and model and co-teach and reflect and plan with teachers is probably one of the most critical aspects of good professional learning.
You can write a beautiful policy and have it there on paper, and it could never touch the lives of kids in classrooms. What it takes for a policy to actually be enacted and implemented is people responding to the call to action. We have districts that have made it a centerpiece of their work. We have classrooms and teachers that have just embraced it despite all of the conditions of the last several years of pandemic. We have these wonderful examples of what it means, even in hard times, to rise to the call.
A tremendous power of the EL roadmap is its aspirational, visionary construct.
The work of the English Learner Roadmap has really just begun.
It really has to be a systemic, focused priority for California.
We have a new opportunity. We have a new promise. We have a new commitment.
And I want all our students and their families to know that they matter, they're capable, they deserve the best. As a superintendent, my advice would be help your administrators come along and your board, work with your staff, and just keep at it. Don't give up, don't get discouraged, just take little steps. But you have to make it a priority. It cannot be an afterthought.
It brings me hope, and it brings me into that aspiration, because I do aspire to what's in that roadmap.
Martha.
And with that, I just want to thank all of you. And I think and I hope that this webinar has inspired you to join us to work towards realizing the promise of our aspirational research-based EL roadmap for all 1.1 million English learners in California. Please join us. And thank you so much for your participation. I thank our presenters, our district representatives, as well as our partners for sharing their stories. Please, please join us. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.